tutorial will introduce you to some of the basic features of AutoCAD architecture, particularly the 2010 version. One thing you'll notice right away is the AutoCAD architecture 2010 interface uses the ribbons and other new features that were introduced with AutoCAD 2009. This tutorial is going to use a simple garage drawing to demonstrate these basic features of the AutoCAD architecture application. If we look at the garage, we zoom in a little bit, we see it's a two-car garage with a little storage area at one end of the garage and a door that will allow you to exit the garage from the rear instead of having to go out through the overhead sectional doors. Also, there's a couple of windows on each side of the garage. You also may notice, if you've been used to drawing with plain AutoCAD, that some of the symbols and the dimensioning look a bit different in the AutoCAD architecture program. If you haven't already, go ahead and start the AutoCAD Architecture 2010 application. One of the first things you may see is the Welcome to AutoCAD Architecture welcome screen. And we're just going to close this out for now. We may come back later and look at some of these getting started movies. We'll begin by starting a drawing like you normally would in AutoCAD. I'm going to click on the AutoCAD application button in the very top left corner of AutoCAD, and I'm going to choose the new command, and we're going to start a new drawing with a selected drawing template. And we're going to look on the K drive like we normally would, or for our templates, or wherever you may have your own templates stored. But normally in class we have these stored on the K drive. And we're going to use the 2080 architectural template. Next, we're going to insert a border like we normally would with AutoCAD. We're going to click on the Insert tab, and then from the ribbon you should see a Block tab, and we can choose Insert Block from there. And we're going to browse for our border. Again, you may actually have to look for it wherever our borders are saved. In this case, we have them on the K drive for this example. And we're going to use a standard 8.5 by 11 border. And if you look at your drawing assignment sheet, you'll see that the drawing of the garage has a scale of 3/16 equals a foot. So that scale proportion would be 64. Then we'll go ahead and enter the needed information for the title block, and we should be ready to draw. Once we have our border, we're actually ready to start drawing a wall. And with AutoCAD architecture, there actually is a wall command. You don't have to lay out polylines and offset them as you had to do with just plain AutoCAD. Let's first, though, before we draw a wall, let's right click on our snap mode, and if you look down at the bottom, you may see the words for all these different modes, and you may not. If you right click, if you're just seeing symbols, if you right click down there and then choose the display settings, not the display, the use icons. If the use icons is checked, you probably are seeing something like this. And for our purposes, let's not use icons. So I'm going to check or uncheck where it says use icons. You may not be able to see this on the screen where I'm recording, but it is there. Alright, so we want to change our snap. I'm going to right click on the snap and change the settings of the snap. And let's go with 6 inches. I don't think there's any increment that we're drawing on this first assignment smaller than 6 inches. And also, let's leave our grid. Let's set our grid while we're here, because we're going to use the grid later on. Let's set it to an even foot, and then hit OK. Okay, now that we have our snap set, let's see how to use the wall command. We want to return to the Home tab, where we can see on our ribbon the Build panel. And if you actually hover enough, you'll see that the upper left little icon there is the wall command. It's right next to the Tools command. But we click on the wall command, and it'll bring up a little palette where we can actually adjust some of the features of our wall, some of the variables. In our case, we want our exterior walls to be 6 inches, and we want our height of the wall to be 8 feet. So we'll enter 8 feet there. And we want to justify our wall from the left. We're actually measuring from the outside edge of our walls for the exterior walls, so we're going to set that to left. Then once you have that, we'll just hover over back into our drawing, and there's a little adding the wall tip that's popped up. Maybe we can close that for now, but we're ready to start drawing the wall. So I'm drawing the wall, and notice I'm showing some measurements as I'm seeing some measurements as I'm drawing. We want a 28-foot wall, and notice it's drawing the wall, both lines of the wall that we need. Again, this is different than we used to do in AutoCAD, where you had to draw the lines and offset them and such. And once you have 3 of the walls drawn, you can right click and close, and there we have the exterior walls completed. Next, we want to draw some interior walls. Let's first check a couple of settings. Let's right click on our O-Snap option at the bottom, our object snap, and click on settings. And let's make sure that the endpoint is the only object snap set. And let's make sure we turn the object snap on. Notice you can turn object snap on and off using the F3 key. And we're going to be using that later on perhaps. Also, for this next step, we want our object snap tracking on. So make sure that box is also checked. Again, we're going to use the wall command again from our ribbon. This time we're going to use a 4-inch wall for our interior walls. We're going to leave the height at 8 feet, but we're going to use the center for our justification because our walls are measured to the center of the interior walls. Now we're ready to start drawing. But what I'm looking at right here is, by default, it's going to try to snap to this endpoint of a line. And I can hover over one corner before I start actually moving my crosshair. But I'm hovering over one corner to I get the little endpoint indicator. But now as I move to the right, you can see AutoCAD is telling me how far it is from the corner. Actually, I should have started on the left corner. Let me start that wall command again. Okay. 4-inch wall, 8 feet in height, justified by the center. Okay, so I'm going to first hover over this upper left corner. Now as I move, I see my tracking showing me how far I am from that corner. This way we don't have to use the distance command or a bunch of different offsets to find the exact center point of this wall. So we're going to just start drawing the wall now. I'm going to draw it all the way across, even though later on we'll come back and trim it. We're going to draw it all the way across. And I'm going to make sure I go to the outside edge of the exterior wall. And when I hit enter, notice it's drawn that interior wall. It's cleaned up the corners for me automatically. And it's made the wall exactly 4 inches wide with 2 inches on center of where we lined up and drew the wall. Okay, we're ready to draw another interior wall. We'll again select the wall command. We'll just check our settings in this palette panel. It's 4 inches wide, 8 feet tall, and it's justified by center, on center. And if this doesn't go away for you automatically, you can right click on here and see that if the auto hide is checked, should be. It's not going away for me. I can click on this little button to make it hide for me. It's not going away automatically. Okay, so I'm hovering over this top left corner, then I'm coming down until I get a readout of 14 feet 3 inches. And I'm not getting a readout of 14 feet 3 inches. Earlier I had set our snap on 6 inches. We probably shouldn't change that. So let's right click on our snap, change the settings to 3 inches for now. Now let's see if we're hitting 14 feet 3. There we go. So from there 14 feet 3, and then we just drag it over till we're lined up with the center of that other interior wall. Then hit enter, and voila, we have that interior wall, and all the cleanup is done automatically where the walls intersect. Now let's trim out this part of the wall we don't need. Up in the AutoCAD ribbon there should be a trim command. It may say AEC trim. Let's click and just scroll down and find the normal trim command. We're going to pick this wall we just drew, highlight it, then hit enter, and then click the part of the wall we don't need. And look at that, everything was cleaned up automatically. Another nice feature of AutoCAD 2010. Now that we've got our walls all complete, we're ready to put in some doors and windows. I want to suggest we start with the windows. And again, if you look at the build panel up in the ribbon, the home ribbon, you should be able to hover and find the window command. In this case, our windows are going to be 3 feet wide by 5 feet tall. So we'll pick on the window command, and if you need to change the width and the height, I think I'm using the default width and height here. And then we're just going to pick somewhere on the upper exterior wall. And as we drag over, we should see our tracking indicator show us how far we are from the upper right corner. And we want to come over 8 feet for this window. And then we're going to draw another window. But that's not working, is it? It actually snapped to an endpoint of a line. So let's start this over. Let's cancel this. Let's undo what we just did. What we need to do is turn off our object snap before we do the windows. But we just don't want to turn it off by clicking on it. We want to use that F3 function key that I talked about earlier. So let's repeat the window command, check our settings, click on the upper wall, and now it's still trying to snap to a endpoint, but let's use the F3 command to turn off our F3 key, to turn off the endpoint object snap option. And we want to come over till our tracking reads 8 feet, and we click and we put in the window, and we just can continue dragging until we put the next window in, which should be how far? Might have to do a little math here to figure out how far it should be. It should be 8 feet plus 3 plus 4 foot 6, which according to my math is 15 feet 6 inches. So we'll go 15 feet 6 to draw that window. Then hit enter, and there you have your 2 windows. We'll repeat this process. Again, you can hit enter to repeat the window command. I need to turn my object snap back on, so I hit the F3 command, or F3 key, and we're going to come over till we're 8 feet from the corner of that wall. And then I'm going to keep coming over, and I can just look up until see that my crosshair is lined up with the window up above before I click to place that window. And there we have our 4 windows that we need. Now we're ready to try to add some doors. We're going to start with the interior door that goes in this little storage area. So let's find the door command up in our ribbon. And we're going going to click on the door command, and in the palette options that appear, we're going to make sure our door is 3 feet wide, and we can leave the height at 7 feet or change it to 7 feet if it hasn't already defaulted to that. We're going to have it measured to the outside of the frame, and we'll let our swing angle be 90 degrees. We'll explain more about all that later. But now let's hover or click on our wall where we want the door to go. And again, F3 to turn off our object snap once we have the door sliding up and down on the wall. And we want this door to be 10 feet from the inside line of the exterior wall. So when we find 10 feet, we'll just click and then hit enter. Your door may not swing the way it should. Mine is not swinging the way it should. So if we just click on the door right now, you'll see some light blue arrows and boxes that gives us some options. If we click on this top arrow by the arrow that's pointing down and click on that, that will flip our door swing, so it's swinging the other way. Now that arrow is pointing up on the other side. So just by clicking on that arrow, it changes the swing of the door. Likewise, the arrow that's pointing left or right, we click on it and it changes whether the door swings in or out of the room. And also you have a blue box you can click on to change where the location of the door is, but we're going to leave it alone for now. Okay, let's add the next door. You may notice as we were editing the variables of the first door, AutoCAD by default may have changed the ribbon to the door ribbon, and you may see the door tab highlighted. So let's return to the home tab so we can see our door command back in the ribbon. Again, we're using the same size door as before, and we're going to turn our object snap back on with F3 or by clicking at the bottom if you haven't done that already. And we should be measuring from this outside edge of the wall, and we want to come up until we're 3 feet 6 from the edge, and then hit enter. And there we have that door, but notice mine's not swinging the right way, so I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to click the arrow that's pointing to the right to have it swing in, and if it's opening the wrong way, I'll click on the up or down arrow to get it the way I want it. So there we have those two doors. Okay, now we're ready to draw the garage doors. Garage doors are commonly referred to as overhead sectional doors. And if you look on your door command, there's probably not going to be an option for overhead sectional doors by default. So what we're going to use is the tool palettes. So if we click on the tools command, this will open up a palette of a number of different architectural options, as you can see by the tabs on the right side of the palette. But we're looking for the doors tab, and we're going to use the overhead sectional door, and this will allow us to use an overhead sectional door style as it will be indicated there. And we want our height to be 8 feet and our width to be 7 feet. And again, we can measure this to the outside of the frame and leave the opening percent to 50. So now we're going to click and make sure first we're going to make sure our object snap is turned on, but we're going to click on the furthest right exterior wall, and we're going to measure from the upper right corner. We're going to come down 2 feet 6 inches and click to place that door, and making sure my object snaps off, I'm going to come on down another, I'm going to come on down and draw another door until my bottom right indicator is showing 2 feet 6 inches also. And then hit enter, and I should have the two doors. Again, just like the interior doors, you can click on them and change the way they flip or open if you need to. Alright, we now have all the features of the floor plan complete, and we're ready to dimension. You first may need to move your floor plan depending on where you drew it. Mine needs to be moved, it's not very well centered. So I'm going to find the move command. It's on the home tab of the ribbon in the Modify panel, and it's a little icon. If you hover over it, it's 4 arrows, one pointing up and down, and one down, one to the left, one to the right. So we'll click on the Move command, and then click 2 points to drag a window to surround the floor plan with, then hit enter, and then move this thing so that it's more centered than it was before. And now we're ready to dimension it. Before we start dimensioning, we want to make sure our dimension scale matches our drawing scale. So down here at the bottom of AutoCAD, right above the command line, you should see a feature called the annotation scale, and it may be set to 1 inch, or in this case it's 1 foot equals 1 foot. That's full size. We want to change that to match the scale that we're using, and ours is 3/16 equals a foot. So let's be sure to choose that before we start dimensioning, otherwise our dimensions might be kind of small. And dimensioning is called an annotation command. So in your Home tab ribbon, there's a panel that has annotation, and there are some dimensioning features there. Also, if you click on the Annotate tab, you'll see quite a few more annotation features. But we want to pick on a linear dimension, so we'll hover till we find that linear dimension. It's the first small icon in the top row on the left side in the Dimensions panel. So we'll click there, and we're just going to click from the upper right corner of our exterior wall over to the inside part of that window, and then drag that dimension up. And I happen to be off by half a foot for some reason. And this is where we probably want our grid on, so we can see when we're at least 3/4 of an inch away from the drawing, or 3 feet. In this case, 3 grids. That's a minimum. So we're off a little. I need to move that window, but you see how the dimensions was done. Also, I forgot to change my layer, so I'm going to click on that dimension, go back to my Home tab, and in the Layers panel, I'm going to choose the Dimension layer. And also, before I begin the next dimension, I'm going to click on that also. Now, if you're off like I am, we can fix this pretty easily just by clicking on the window and then dragging it over. Of course, with our object snap off, that will help. We just want to drag that over 6 inches, and then we'll redimension that. So again, I went to the Annotate tab, I clicked on the Linear Dimension command, clicked on the edge of my door, I'm going to the inside edge of the window, then dragging it up at least 3 grids away from the drawing, the wall. Now I can continue by using the Dim Continue command, which is right next to the Dim Linear command. And by doing this, this makes the rest of the dimensions a lot easier. I can just come down and click on the other edge of the window. Then I can go over to the next window, click on its edge, and click on the other edge of that window. Go on over to the center of my interior wall, and then go on over to the outside edge of the left exterior wall. And when I have all those dimensions in place, I can just hit enter, and voila, I've got that all dimensioned correctly. I still have a window that's off a bit, and I want to fix that by using the Stretch command. So let's go to the Home tab. If you're off a little bit, you can use the same procedure. If you're not, good for you. I'm going to hover. Where am I hovering here? The Trim command doesn't have the Stretch command. What I may have to do is expand my Modify panel until I can find the Stretch command. There it is. Upper row, 3rd column over, gives me the Stretch command. And I'm just going to surround, going from right to left, this 5 foot dimension, and the window over past to the left side of the window, so it crosses my 3 foot dimension, and hit enter. I'm just going to pick any point and drag it over a half a foot. Now my dimensions should match what I have on the drawing there. We can continue by using the same annotation options, the linear dimension and then the dim continue command. But for the overall dimension, we would need to use the linear command and click on the two exterior corners of the outside walls, and there we have the overall dimension. So complete this drawing by providing all the needed dimensions.